I was born and raised in this town. I love Austin. It's strange to think that not that long ago, planes were landing right where we are right now. For all you new Austin transplants, it's new to me, but being born and raised in this town for me has been probably the biggest blessing I could have ever asked for. There's art and culture and community and just the best people that you can find. And that includes being born into an incredible family. My mom is here tonight. My dad, my sisters. Yeah, hey, Babs. And I lived a completely normal childhood all the way up until I was 10 years old. And that's when I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. At that point in time, it was a rare blood cancer for children. It only occurred in adults. And there was a relatively low survival rate. And I was sent to Brackenridge Children's Hospital, immediately put into induction chemotherapy. And for 5 months straight, that's what I did. I lived in the hospital. I had chemo. I was shackled to an IV pole. I had infections and viruses and fever, nausea, vomiting, just the worst of the worst. And when you're 10 years old, your conception of cancer is you lose your hair and people die from it. And I was okay with the first, but not really okay with the second. And at one point, we realized that I've got this kind of funny smell that I'm sensing in my nasal cavity. And it turns out I developed a fungal infection called Aspergillus, which is the third deadliest fungal infection in the world. If you're gonna get a fungal infection, I highly recommend getting the third. The first and the second, I've heard, are not very great. But Aspergillus is okay. Doesn't really have an attitude over a 1 or a 2. And so for 2 weeks, I had 2 surgeries a day, and in between those surgeries, I was in a hyperbaric chamber for an hour. And so I'm sitting in this long tube, and on the TV screen, they would play a movie, and the movie Apollo 13 had just come out a few years prior, and it was one of my favorite movies. I wanted to be an astronaut as a kid. And so Tom Hanks and his crew are traveling to the moon. They have this explosion, and they're unable to get it, but the mission that saved them brought them back to Earth. And that was going to be my cancer story. It's like, I might not live the exact life I wanted to, but I'm still going to make it back to Earth. And there was a scene early on in the movie where they lose a center engine on their way out of space, and Tom Hanks relays, Houston, we have a problem. We have a center engine cutoff. Go on the other 4. And they say, no big deal. We'll just burn the engines for a little longer. And Tom Hanks looks at his fellow crewmates and says, looks like we just had our glitch for this mission. That was the first cancer that I had. It was the glitch in the mission. Little did I know that I would still have to go all the way around the moon and come back home. 3 months after the induction chemotherapy, I was in remission, and I went back for a checkup, and they say, your cancer's back, you've got to go to a bone marrow transplant. So I go to more rounds of chemo, more rounds of radiation. I go to Cook Children's Hospital, 1996 in Fort Worth, Texas, and I have arguably the most painful experience an 11-year-old boy can undergo. So bone marrow transplant, for those of you that don't know, it's just a blood transfusion. So it's actually more painful for the donor to extract marrow out of your lower back than it is for the person getting it. The side effects that come from that is your body's rejection of this new tissue, this new substance in your body. So immediately my body started rejecting it. Fevers, seizures, 107.1 fever one night. And I told my mom I wanted to die. And I realized that after being in labor with me for 24 hours, it was a pretty heavy task to say, sorry I lived this long, Mom, but I can't keep fighting anymore. And she goes, I wanted to give up whenever I was in pain for you for a whole day, and I haven't. And, you're just going to give up with a little bone marrow transplant? Is that what's happening right now? Yeah, mother's guilt is a very powerful thing. So I keep fighting. I make it through that, and 14 months later, I relapse again. And there's a few things I don't think you should ever get used to. Like, you should never become familiar with, getting arrested. Like, if you know the name of your judge, you'd be like, hey, Judge Miller, I'm back again, sorry. And bone marrow transplantation is one of those things where you shouldn't be familiar, oh, you're gonna give me the Diprivan again for the surgery, and I'm gonna have cisplatin and the chemo, and are we doing radiation this time or no? I know we got a discount last time, but now it's there's no BOGO on the second order. Okay, cool. So go through the second transplant, and I'm like, this is easy. Half the recovery time, half of the terrible side effects, and I beat it. I recovered. I beat cancer. I'm back in high school. I'm meeting girls for the first time. Sorry, baby, my wife Kendall is here. I won't talk about the girls too much. But I was excited to be normal again. And I had recovered. I had come back from literally being shackled to a hospital bed with no strength whatsoever. There was one night during transplant number 2 where I couldn't taste anything. I could smell, but I couldn't taste, which is terrible. If you're craving pancakes and sausage and you can smell it, but you can't taste it, worst thing in the world. Wouldn't recommend that. So my mom goes downstairs because she doesn't want to tease me. She goes to get her food, and Dumb and Dumber and a cassette tape. Y'all remember cassette tapes? The cassette had ended, and I wanted to play, I think, Who's Harry Crumb or something like that. And I tried to stand up on this little ledge to get the VCR, to get the tape out of the VCR, and I collapsed. I buckled. And I had played soccer and baseball. I was an elite athlete, for as elite as a 10-year-old can be. But I was bending it before Beckham was bending it. Like, I was a legit soccer player all throughout middle school and high school. And so I lost all that strength, and I was able to rebuild all that in a year's time after the second bone marrow transplant. Then start to feel this little pain in my jaw. Tumor develops. I go through a 12.5-hour facial reconstruction to remove this tumor in March of 2000 at MD Anderson, the most renowned cancer center in the world. They used a fibula for my left leg to reconstruct it. 2 weeks after the reconstruction, I'm shackled down to a hospital bed again, a surgical bed. They're going to remove an infection from my mouth and put in a feeding tube directly into my stomach. They start to do this. They sedate me. They don't put me completely out because they're worried about my breathing. And I had a tracheotomy coming out of my throat, and my jaw was wired shut. I wake up before the surgery ends. And they can't see because my eyes are covered with a wet rag trying to keep my eyes moist. I start hyperventilating. I start throwing up into my tracheotomy, the one place where I can breathe. They sedate me. I pass out. 3 days later, I wake up, and on this little whiteboard, most of y'all probably had surgery before. There's a little smiley faces on the bottom. The last one is frowning, and it's your pain scale. And I crossed them all out, and I wrote down, just let it kill me. I did not want to start over again. I did not want to go through all of that one more time just to get cancer again and again and again. My mom pulled out this bin of over 700 letters from all of my students in my high school that had rescheduled their prom night to be, instead of at a hotel, save money, have it at the school cafeteria, and then gift my family that money. And she said, it's not just me. We have all these people wanting you to continue to fight and be back home. That strength carried me through drug addiction, being hooked on pain meds for years after the cancer. Not an hour really went by for 6 years that I wasn't on pain meds. In 2008, I was finally off of the pain meds, and I found rejuvenation of athletic spirit through cycling and triathlon. And I made it all the way to the Ironman World Championship in Hawaii in 2012 because of it. Shortly after that, I realized I want to dedicate myself to this. I want to share my story of inspiration so that other cancer patients and survivors, but anyone that needs a little inspiration, can have it. And so in 2015, I did get to climb and summit Mount Kilimanjaro with 15 cancer patients or survivors or family of survivors. We raised money for it, and I thought, this is it. I'm going to dedicate my life to raising money and awareness so that people can live full, long-lasting lives. The last piece of the puzzle, the one thing that I really regret, was not finishing school, not finishing my undergrad. I was so overwhelmed with years of pain medication and lack of passion for life that I dropped out in my freshman year, and I never went back. And I worked odd jobs here and there. I lied. I had horrible relationships. I got arrested. I had no semblance of passion for life. And it wasn't until that one moment in rehab when I thought, I'm going to come back from this and I'm going to be better and stronger than ever before. Part of that was meeting my wife, Kendall. Kendall was finishing her doctorate, one of 7 degrees that she has now. She's a psychopath. She's about to go back to school to get her PhD again. She's psychotic, I swear. But she inspired me in that time to go back to school. And our theme tonight is just like starting over. I realized I had to start completely from scratch as a freshman at the age of 32. Last year, I graduated cum laude from Concordia University. I'm now in grad school at Texas State. I teach communication studies, and now I'm the director of strategic partnerships and communication for a medical cannabis company whose sole mission is to provide life-saving medication for people that have cancer, PTSD, epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, and any number of approved conditions. If I had not gone through any of that stuff before, if I hadn't gone through the cancer and the drug addiction and doubt and fear and pain, then I wouldn't be standing in front of you today here, victorious. And now, no matter what in life, the only thing I focus on is finding the good. And the moral of this story is no matter where you are in this journey that we call life, it's never too late to start over. Thank you.